Howdy folks, and welcome back to War Thunder Ground Forces with the mighty Jingles. You would not believe the number of War Thunder replays that have mysteriously appeared in my inbox since around about this time last week. And I thought that today I was going to go with this one. This is Anonimo Lopi, and he is in the mighty Doom Turtle, the American T95. Well, they call it a tank destroyer, but technically it's a super heavy tank, even though it doesn't have a turret. Just in case it wasn't obvious, this is a realistic battle, so there's none of that pesky aim assistance that you get in arcade. You have to calculate and estimate the amount of lead that you need to give to the target all by yourself. Although you can use the range markers on the crosshairs of the gun sight to assist you in that. By the time you've played a few realistic battles, if you're ever going to be any good at it, you tend to basically be able to work it out for yourself. You may have noticed that Anonimo here has a couple of cosmetic extras plastered to the front of his tank. There's a bush around the gun mantlet, and it looks like he's got a stop sign or two around the right hand side of the upper glacis. These are of course purely cosmetic, they're just there for customising your tank. I think these were starting to be introduced into War Thunder just over a year ago, around about when I stopped playing the game. You can of course completely overdo it. I saw a guy in an M22 Locust who had the turret of his tank covered in stop signs, and so naturally he thought it was hilarious to act as a mobile roadblock and drive around the battlefield stopping in front of friendly tanks because, you know, he had stop signs on his tank. Yes, it was an arcade battle. So, what's the difference between the T28 and the T95? Well, they're the same machine. Yes, I know they exist in both War Thunder and World of Tanks as separate vehicles, but they are actually the same machine. But they look different, Jingles. Well, yeah, the T95 is always shown in-game as having two sets of tracks on each side. But if you were to look at the T95 and take that outer set of tracks away, it's a T28. So why the difference in names? Well, therein lies the story. Design on this project began in 1943. It was intended to be used to breach the defences of the Siegfried Line. It was going to be equipped with the 105mm gun from the T29 project, the T5E1 gun, which was known to have excellent concrete busting properties. Unfortunately, design and development took so long that by the time the machine was ready, the Siegfried Line had already been breached. Although rather than abandon the project, they decided to keep going because they had the idea that the machine could be useful in the assault on the Japanese home island. Obviously the term big, fat, slow, heavy bastard with a 105mm gun sticking out of the nose didn't exactly roll off the tongue, and so the US Army needed to call this thing something. And since it was originally supposed to be a heavy tank, the next number available in the US Army's numbering list for heavy tanks was T28. And so this machine originally entered development as Heavy Tank T28. And that would have been fine, until some bright spark in the Ordnance Department said, well, hang on a minute, it's not really a tank at all, it doesn't have a turret, it's more of a big, heavy, self-propelled gun. And they took a look at the numbering list, and the next number available for an artillery piece was T95. And so the name was changed to Gun Motor Carriage T95. And everybody would have been completely fine with that until some other bright spark pointed out that self-propelled guns tend to be very lightly armoured, and this thing was anything but. And so the name was finally changed in 1946 to Super Heavy Tank T28. So it went from being the T28 to the T95, back to the T28 again. It is the same machine. It's just shown in the games that we play in different stages of development. Meanwhile, back in War Thunder Realistic Battle, Anonimo here was advancing on Capture Point B, very, very slowly because this thing weighs 80 odd tons and only has a 500 horsepower engine. But his flank protection has just been knocked out, and if he was to continue advancing any further up to the brow of that hill, that would open him up to flanking fire from the left. So instead, he's very, very slowly advancing to the right hand side of this hill, which should hopefully keep him under the guns of the enemy defenders on the hill and allow him to bring his big old 105mm gun to bear on these enemy tanks here. Like that IS-3, who thought that his flanks were protected by the friendly tanks on the hill to his left. Newsflash, they're not. Right after knocking out the IS-3, he catches sight of the T-54. Now he can hit the T-54 in the side of the turret, but there's also an IS-6 on the ridge up ahead, so Can he keep the gun pointed at the T-54 while keeping the armour angled against any shots from the IS-6? And yeah, I think he probably can. And I don't know if you noticed, but right before he took out the T-54, a shot impacted on the ground just to the left of his tank. And the second shot, which followed the ranging shot fired by that Object 906 over there, penetrates his side, takes out his loader and his commander, and damages his gun breech. And then the follow-up shot knocks out his tracks and immobilises him, but not before he managed to get the tank and the gun turned around to point at this Object 906, who continues to bombard him with high explosive anti-tank fin stabilised ammunition, which could have killed him if he fired it at his lower glacis, which is only 133mm thick, but it doesn't, and so Anonimo kills him. Anonimo has had his T95 knocked out many times by Russian tanks firing 122mm high explosive anti-tank fin stabilised ammo, but not if they fire it at his gun mantlet or his upper glacis. Now that actually came as something of a surprise, because you'll notice that he's still got the inner set of tracks on the left side disabled, but he's able to swing the tank around just using the tracks on the right hand side anyway, although he has to be feeling pretty nervous in such a large target as this when the Russians have air superiority. Luckily that AR-2 didn't go for him, because it'd be difficult to miss something as big as this, especially when it's stationary. Well, 3 kills. I think he's sitting here waiting for his tracks to be repaired, so he can actually start moving forward rather than just rotating on the spot. There goes that AR-2 circling around. There was an Ilyushin 10. Oh crap, there he is. It looks like he's already expended his ammunition on another target. And these tracks are taking forever. Oh, and he's taking flanking fire from a T-34-85, and that's when his tracks come back up, which is incredibly bad news for the T-34. Yeah, that one, I think he's panicked. As would I, if I was in his situation. There we go, kill number 4. Now for that pesky IS-6 on the ridge. Well, I mean, I say pesky IS-6, but he hasn't exactly been much of a problem, has he? He's just been sort of sitting there on the ridge. And now he's pulled back. He's had any number of opportunities. Well, then again, I mean, he could have crested the ridge and slammed a couple of shots into Anonimo while he was killing the IS-3 and the T-34-85 and the Object 906 and the T-54, but, well, there is a Carnarvon just appeared on his flank, so maybe he didn't want to risk getting his lower glacis shot up by the Carnarvon's 20-pounder. Unfortunately for the Carnarvon, they've been outflanked. There's a bad guy behind them. And, yeah, he's gone for the Carnarvon first. T-44 back there, pumping shots into the Carnarvon's big fat ass with relative impunity. And Anonimo has the choice of continuing over the ridge and getting out of line of fire of the T-44, or turning around and killing him. He has taken out the Carnarvon, but that's the last shot he's going to be firing in this game. Killed number 5. And that, I suppose, was probably the right thing to do, because there's nothing to stop the T-44 from killing the Carnarvon and then chasing Anonimo up and over this hill and doing the same thing to him from behind, where his armour is only 50mm thick. Anyway, his rear is secure, he's running out of escorts, but he's over the ridge and he's advancing on capture point B. All kinds of knocked out wrecks of tanks around here. The fighting has been particularly fierce. There is some kind of enemy tank over the ridge to his left, but he's not an immediate threat. He's keeping his head on a swivel here. He wants to see them before they see him. Keeping a good look all around, just in case. That T-44 to the rear may not necessarily have been alone. Enemy fighter aircraft up ahead making strafing runs on something. Not an immediate problem for Anonimo. And he's into the cap circle, still looking around for enemies. Doesn't really know what's on his right flank, so he uses the buildings to protect his right flank. And he's going to keep an eye on the left flank, all on his lonesome. And that's when our little friend in the IS-6 decides to crash the party. The IS-6 is going to have a hard time penetrating Anonimo from the front, so he's trying to close the distance and get around to the side. And so, of course, Anonimo puts his first shot right into his tracks and stops him dead in, well, his tracks. Now, the IS-6 could have taken Anonimo out by putting a shot into his lower glacis, but he would have had to do it from further away than he currently is, because the closer you get to the front of the T95, the more pronounced the angle of the 133mm lower glacis becomes when you're shooting down into it. And, well, yeah, now he's even going to have a hard time penetrating the lower glacis, and you can see he is kind of panicking here. His tracks are blown off, he's trying to turn. Anonymo goes for the turret ring shot, and it doesn't knock the IS-6 out, but the fragments do cause damage to his gun breech, so now all he really has left is his coaxial machine gun. And you are not going to beat the frontal armour of a T95 with a coaxial machine gun. Anonymo has now capped B, so he's free to leave the cap circle and close in, and the IS-6 just decides, screw you guys, I'm going home, and suicides. Luckily, there is some justice in the world. As the last person to damage him, Anonymo gets credited with the kill, so kill number 6. Right, B has been capped, but there are far too many surprise tanks popping up on Anonymo's flanks up here for him to feel completely safe. He's up here completely unsupported, so he starts pulling back. And that is more or less when things take a turn for the ridiculous. He's checking his flanks again just to make sure he's not about to get surprised when... the hell? It's a potato truck! It's armed with twin 20mm guns. And of course, because Anonymo's commander has been knocked out, there's nobody to operate his 50 caliber machine gun. And all he has is armour piercing, or armour piercing composite rigid, so every one of these shots is going to completely over-penetrate this thing. This is like the blind leading the blind. I mean, Anonymo can't kill him without that machine gun. Well, he can, but it's going to take an extremely lucky shot from the 105mm gun. The thing is, the potato truck there, with his twin 20mm cannons, only has around about 46mm of penetration. And Anonymo's rear armour is 50mm thick. He can't blow his tracks off because the tracks are protected by armour skirts. And this really could have gone on forever. Until the Crusader AA turned up with his 20mm gun, which is definitely not going to over-penetrate our little friend in the potato truck, who you have to give him credit for bravery. At least he gave it a damn good try. Crusader AA, having dealt with the momentary annoyance, now crawls slowly forward into the cap circle, and he wasn't completely wasting his time, that little guy, because he did manage to decap B, and fresh enemy tanks are arriving to finish the job that he started. First shot kind of snapped into the T44-100 there, didn't knock him out, but has damaged his gun barrel, so now he's running the risk of blowing his barrel off if he fires the gun. It's likely that the T44-100 was just trying to get a shot off at the Crusader AA, because he can definitely kill him, and he's used the spotting opportunity to light up everybody in the cap circle here in order to call in an artillery barrage. Did momentarily spot some kind of enemy tank over on the right flank as this M19 very bravely rushes forward into the face of that T44-100, probably in order to get out from underneath this artillery barrage, and then decides, actually, that's not a great idea, I'm going to take my chances with the artillery, and backs off. Anonymo did take a direct hit from a mortar shell there on the side, but the armoured skirts do their job and they prevent the tracks from getting blown off. Finally, some friendly air cover arrives. I think it was an F-80 doing a bombing run on the T-44 over there. It's about time. It's the first friendly aircraft we've seen overhead this entire game, which probably explains what all the self-propelled anti-aircraft guns are doing on the firing line. They can't find any aircraft to shoot at. Still a couple of enemy tanks, however, like this sneaky little T-44 who's worked his way around the flank, who, all things considered, probably wishes he hadn't bothered. Kill number 7. Another T-44 over there, and I don't know what the Crusader AA thinks he's going to do, but, well, there aren't that many enemy tanks left, so he's probably thinking, screw it, no guts, no glory, as an SU-100 makes a last-ditch attempt to run down the cap while under fire from one of the self-propelled anti-aircraft guns, but all he does is chew on yet another 105mm shell for kill number 8. The Crusader, probably not really worth the risk. He's been taken out, obviously, by the T-44, but the T-44's days are numbered, because now Anonymo is going for him. And the T-95 might be slow, hell, it is slow, but the T-44 is far too close to make a run for it, and the T-95 has lots and lots and lots of 105mm friends who are way faster than any Soviet medium tank. There is still one tank on the enemy team who's putting up some meaningful resistance. There's a T-44-100 who's just knocked out a Gun Motor Carriage M36. That's Cookie Baron in the T-44-100. Surprisingly, that's the guy who was in the IS-6 who decided that it was all far too much effort and suicided in front of Anonymo's T-95 earlier in the cap circle. At this point, with 2 cap circles under their control and the enemy team bleeding tickets, it's only a matter of time before they lose. And again, everything around him has died to enemy fire, so once again, Anonimo is more or less completely unsupported. And while the T95 is a powerful machine, if unsupported, there are still plenty of machines on the enemy team. Well, there aren't plenty of machines on the enemy team, but any of the machines remaining on the enemy team, even the ZSU-37, if they get around the sides and the rear, they could cause him significant problems. But, well, we're looking at a 10-kill game here, and there is not an awful lot of time left. And so Anonimo decides, screw it, it's worth the risk. Support or no support, he's going to go for it and try and get that 10th kill. Was looking for the shot at the ZSU-37, but he's hull down over there, shooting at a friendly aircraft, so it looks like it's going to be the IS-3, who does not appear to be aware. Well, it's not surprise but sex, but it's close enough, I'll take it. He goes for the turret shot, and it surprisingly doesn't even cause turret ring damage, but the IS-3 has had his tracks blown off. So Anonimo has all the time in the world, especially now that his loader has recovered, to aim below the side skirts, under the tracks, right where he should have put the shot in the first place. Blows the IS-3 away, claims his 10th kill, swings the machine around in the dying seconds of the match, desperate to claim the 11th kill on that ZSU, but well, there's an M47 on the team who's far too fast for him. Scores the final kill of the match, enemy team are all dead, tickets depleted, 10 kills, Mozdok domination, realistic battle, Anonimo in the 105mm T95 Gun Motor Carriage, or possibly the T28 Heavy Tank, or T28 Super Heavy Tank, depending on who you ask and when. That's it for today, folks. Hope you enjoyed it. And as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.